New episodes of Tour Talk go live every Monday, so please subscribe, comment, and like if you enjoy what you hear, and help us spread the word by continuing to share this with anyone you think will enjoy. This is Tour Talk.
All right, we're rolling
now.
100%.
You look amazing.
Thanks, buddy.
I'm so happy. This is the best. Like, you've been teasing me for a couple of days. Like, we've been trying to plan this call, and like, I knew that like you'd obviously had to shave some of your beard off, and I didn't know whether you were going to keep the tash for the call. And now look at you. You look glorious, man.
I mean,
this is amazing.
It's pretty good.
It's amazing. I love it. How's it going down at home, though?
It's going. Everyone's responded very well to it. And what's funny is my dad has had a mustache like this since probably the 1970s, 80s.
Oh, wow.
Literally.
Okay.
I'll send a picture to Rob so he can put up.
Your dad? Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah,
Very
during
cool.
this. Yeah.
Very cool.
But it's pretty scary the older you get, you kind of start realizing you act like your parents and you look like them now in my case, but yeah.
So is this a keeper? Like, I mean, have you taken it
like
outside?
I've taken it outside.
Mm-hmm.
There's been children have not, parents have not warned their children about being in a perimeter of me. And I'm getting interesting looks from women over 40.
It's strong. This is what I like
strong.
about it. It's like, it's strong. It's like a real
It's making a statement.
Like, it's thick. I mean, I can imagine like you in your Bono glasses with that tash, like.
Yeah, people like it.
It's real.
What can I say? I think it's fun on New Year's, especially to kind of do something new, start over,
Sure.
go fresh.
So this is, of course, another episode of Tour Talk. Rob is berating me all the time. Like, you've got to plug the socials. You've got to do this. Like, so this is an episode of Tour Talk. This is the first one of 2021 for us. Are we going to do a year in review? Do you want to look back? Do you want to look forward? Where do we go with this?
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should look back for a few minutes because looking forward is so uncertain right now that I think let's look at the year. By the way, though, you have to remind me, I have something in my head about Rob.
Sure. Should we thank Rob for his work over these last few months for helping us piece this together?
I wasn't
thinking
about anything. I wasn't thinking anything like that. No. Of course, Rob is our producer and editor, and he's done just a remarkable job of putting some cohesion to this babbling brook of bullshit.
I mean, very rarely do we sell him like a full batch of files with working audio and working video.
Oh yeah, last week I was missing an hour. But there you go.
But he always makes it work. So I mean, considering he didn't know how to use any software like 2 months ago, he's been amazing. So thanks to Rob.
Correct.
So looking back, like I know we've touched on it on a couple of other episodes, but like the time that we had like in Manchester, I mean we've covered bits of it and what it was like for you being here stuck in lockdown, but I feel like we probably haven't talked about the most important bits of it, like especially for you and what you were going through at the time.
Sure.
And how your whole career was kind of transitioning, and how it was like super up and then super down within a couple of days. And I think it would be really interesting to kind of really get into that because there was a couple of real personal moments in that I hope you don't mind talking about.
Yeah, we could talk about it, and you were there every step of the way, so it was. I'm sure it was interesting for you too, kind of.
So, for those who don't know, you came over to Europe in February. To start off doing some shows in Sweden with Dan Reed and Danny Vaughan. First real batch of like solo acoustic shows you'd ever done on your own.
Yeah, I mean the whole thing really stemmed. The whole thing stemmed from you. The whole thing stemmed from. I felt like the situation that I was in the band that I was in, wasn't going to go much further. Even if we were just talking about 2020, it didn't seem like a lot was going to happen. And it was the first time where I said, you know what, I have some songs I've been kicking around. Maybe I should write songs, record them, and do a couple tours and just whatever. Let's see what happens. And then you quickly facilitated a tour with Dan Reed, Danny Vaughn doing their group project together called Snake Oil. So I flew out to Portland to meet with you while you were in the studio with Dan. And everything kind of quickly came together, and we said, all right, let's do this tour. It's going to be great. The dates came together pretty quickly, and they looked great. And from January 1st to March 1st, I was preparing to go on my first solo tour. And for me, it was really, the whole thing was about, and we've talked about this before, but the whole thing was about connecting back to what I loved about doing music in the first place, and kind of where I started and where I came from, which was basically in a minivan with an acoustic guitar and not planning to get hotel rooms, to sleep in the van. And you were pretty much the only person who thought that was cool. So
I just thought it was bold. Like, why not? Like, if you're willing to do that, I feel like that shows to anybody that this is all I want to do, and it doesn't matter in what fashion. This is like an honest representation of how I want to live my life. It doesn't care if I play to 10 people or 10,000 people. If I get paid $100 or $1 million, like, I just want to go and play music to people and enjoy the interaction and stuff that brings. So, like, yeah, I thought that was really cool.
It was more about, it was less about proving it to other people. It was more about being like, do I want to still do this? You know what I mean? Because it's been a long, 15 plus years of trying to make a living at this. So fast forward, I basically worked a part-time job, and I worked basically a night shift, and I worked from all through January, February, and March, 6-7 days a week on end, boom, 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 in the studio all day, working all night, sleeping 4 or 5 hour shifts, and then I landed in Manchester.
No, did you come to Manchester first and then go to Sweden? Yeah.
Yeah, remember so we got together for a few days in an Airbnb in the northern quarter of Manchester.
We did.
And you brought me some guitars, and we went and picked up the camper van, and we got settled in, and we prepared for this tour.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, because you went to Sweden.
Oh, that's
did 3
right.
shows over there.
3 shows. It's a blur. And after the first night, it was kind of like, holy shit, I love this. Like, I can do this, and I want to do this. And then the next show was even better. And then the third night, I was on cloud 9. It was like, oh my God, if the shows in Sweden were this good, I can't wait to go to England, where I've actually played a bunch of times, and there's going to be people there to see me. And this feels like there's some momentum happening. And so we kind of started hearing a little bit about coronavirus, but we hadn't really.
Yeah.
It kind of happened within like
Nobody
48
was taking
hours.
it seriously.
Especially in the U.S.
It was so strange because, especially for you, it felt for like the first time in a long time you actually had some momentum. You'd come over here. I think we did an open mic night first at the Whiskey Jar, and that went down really well. Then you went off to Sweden and played 3 shows, and they went really, really well. And you already had the booking agent from that, like, getting in touch with you about going back later in the year. You were all set to kind of go and do those UK shows, which, should have been bigger again for you because, as you said, you toured over here quite a lot previously and you'd had some following. And then, we started hearing little snippets about coronavirus and the potential that shows may be cancelled or, like, people couldn't travel. And obviously with Danny Vaughan and Dan Reed living in different parts of Europe, they were having to consider whether to fly into the UK or not to do the shows. But I genuinely believe that it was all going to go ahead because the show always happens. Like, that's just the bottom line with what we do in general, is that, like, the show always happens. Like, no matter what gets in the way, no matter whether you flip your van or whether, lightning hits the fucking building, like, you do the show.
Yeah, we do it.
So in my head, it was just another thing that we would overcome and those shows would go ahead. But then it turned out pretty quickly that wasn't going to happen. But I remember being sat with you in that Airbnb again and you were asking me, do you think these are going to get cancelled? Is this really going to happen? And I was like, no, it'll be fine. The shows are definitely going to happen. And I think the first show was meant to be March the 1st in London.
I flew back on Monday, and the show was supposed to be Thursday. So we had Tuesday and Wednesday, and then into London. And so the first show was supposed to be in... Sorry, go ahead.
No, because I think another thing happened on the Monday. I think on the Monday we were juggling whether or not the tour was going to go ahead. But then...
Right, because those...
You got the call from Tim
so those guys flew home. Dan Reed and Danny Vaughn flew. There was going to be 3 or 4 days off, and it picked back up at the Half Moon in Putney, and those guys flew home, and then they kind of called you and said, "Hey, I don't know if these shows are going to happen, and we're already back home, so we don't know that we're going to fly back." So immediately we're like, "Jesus Christ!" Like.
Because no shows means no money for you, and you've paid for your flights and accommodation to come over.
Everything's paid for at this point, so I'm $7,000 in the hole, $6,000 in the hole with rentals and lost fees and merch prints and everything. I mean, we're deep in it.
Yeah.
So on Monday, and I want to say the first show in London is supposed to be the 12th. That makes sense, and Monday's the 9th. About.
Okay, I can't remember.
I get a phone call from a good friend and booking agent, who wasn't currently my agent. He is now, but at that time he was calling as a friend, and he called and said, "Hey, I got some really bad news for you." And it's funny because I can remember immediately picking up. I remember seeing the phone. Okay, let me preface this really quick without.
I remember this really, really well.
So I remember Brian, my manager at the time, and Lionize's manager for 6 years, my manager for this new project, for the new direction of my solo career, and I've known the guy for 12 years. We had been looking for an agent for me for my solo stuff, and I know he had been talking to Tim. And kicking around the idea with a couple other agents who were interested. So when I saw the phone ring, I was like, holy shit, this is amazing.
You were excited, yeah, because me and you were sat maybe working on a little acoustic cover.
Yeah, we were playing guitar in the living room. I mean, we were just working on music, and I said, holy shit, Tim's calling. He only calls if it's really good, if it's something we're talking about. I haven't talked to him since I saw him on February 3rd at Brian's house at a Super Bowl party. And so we had a cool conversation. He said, send me some tracks if you're working on new stuff. So I know that the music, So in my head, I'm like, this is awesome. I mean, I'm about to go play London, and I think...
This was the whole momentum thing. You'd gone to Sweden, the Swedish agent was interested, Tim Ball was calling you.
Yeah, we had an agent in Sweden who said, hey, dude, I'll book you in 3 months from now. I'll fly you back over and let's do shows. And I was like, this is crazy. So Tim called and he said, I got some bad news for you. And I thought he was kind of like kidding. I don't know. In my head, I think he's fucking around or something. I don't really know. And he said, Brian passed away last night. And it like, I remember it like knocking the wind out of me and being like, I couldn't breathe. I was like, what? Like it didn't, I don't know I still don't fully understand it. It just didn't make sense at the time. It was like, I was just talking to him 36 hours ago. Like, what? I was just texting him and telling him how great the shows in Sweden were. And like, this is really going to work out. And he was like, I don't know what to tell you, dude. He's dead. Like, he's gone. And I was just like, holy shit. And I remember looking at you and being like, this is crazy, but Brian died. Yeah. I mean, I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm still exasperated by the I guess it's strange because people tell you your entire life, people drill it into your head like life is short, life is short, life is short. It's unexpected. There's no guarantee. And then when it happens, you're like, holy shit, that's that's
really,
that's real.
And I think at that point you were contemplating whether to go back home. Do you stay and do the shows? Is that what Brian would have wanted you to do? Do you want to go back home and see family and friends, all that kind of stuff?
What do you do? And then 2 hours later, I got a call from his wife, kind of reiterating the same thing, and the phone call was very short, and it was very hard to talk through it. And his wife, Kristen, who I've known as long as him, obviously, and spent countless nights staying at their house and having dinner with them and spending Christmas Day with them or New Year's Day with them, just on and on and on. I mean, this is like, a second family to me. So it's hard to put it into words. Like, all right, maybe the tour's not going to happen. Your good friend and manager has just died. What the fuck do I do? And I looked at you and I was just like, what do we even do? What is even happening in this situation? Yeah. Because it's funny when those things happen. I think the world, you become very narcissistic, right? You start thinking like, what's going to happen to me?
Yeah.
When like this guy's wife and son just lost a husband and a father, and the world is starting to face a pandemic, and I'm like, ugh, I can't play this fucking tour. Like, what about me? So it's this really conflicting thing. And I kind of remember, I think we came to the conclusion that like I should probably do whatever shows I can do, because
it was just ride out whatever is going to happen here, play some shows until people say you can't play shows anymore, and then there will be a way to get home. And I think at that point,
and those guys,
I think a lot of people started reaching out to you, didn't they? Like online and stuff.
Well,
kind of
not yet,
especially when the tour got cancelled.
That hasn't happened. So I remember this really one distinct moment. The next day before London is when everything kind of goes bananas. But I remember the show in London, and as far as we knew, still Dan and Danny might still be flying into London. So we were like, all right, I'm going to head down to London. So we spent the next day prepping, picked up the minivan, got all the stuff in it, and I headed to London. And I slept at a rest stop about 2 hours out.
What you missed was that the Wednesday before you went, we went out for drinks, and it's the first time you actually met Rob in person.
Oh, yeah.
And we went back to the Whiskey Jar, and they let you play again. And I think I remember now. I think I've even got the video of it. And you did a song for Brian, didn't you? I think I've got the recording.
Right.
Did you dancing on my own?
Yeah, so I recorded and have been playing a version of Robin's Dancing on My Own, and Brian was it's just so weird because he's like a punk rock and roll kind of guy, and he would be like, oh, I love Robin, I've worked with her and bringing her over to play in Philly, and so I remember we got pretty wasted that night, and we went to the whiskey and got pretty drunk, and then out of nowhere, Joe McAdam, who runs the Whiskey Jar show, was like, hey, do you want to go on last and you can play a couple songs? And I was like, all right, I'm in no condition. He was like, nah, you're good. You should do it. So I got up there, and it was hard to kind of botch the first tune because I was a little drunk and in my head about everything. And then I kind of told everybody in the crowd, like, so I was very used to being in a band that I would never do something like this where I would like talk to the crowd or like make myself emotionally vulnerable. And I said, if there's ever a time,
it's amazing.
If there's ever a time to do it. So it was completely silent. And I kind of told people, hey, I'm not trying to bum you out. In the last 24 hours, my world has turned upside down, and this song is for the guy. And as we got kind of halfway through the song, people started singing with me, and it was one of those moments kind of when people were singing the chorus, and it was like, all right, if there's anything that's worth doing in life, it's 100% music, because it's this thing that brings people together, and it's a real healing thing. I don't know how to describe it, but it's
Do you get solace from that moment? Do you remember that? Like, do you remember feeling better because of that?
I remember thinking, if one of your best friends dies and you have to go to work, this is probably the best job that you're going to get to have. Like, I couldn't imagine having to sit in a cubicle all day and reflect upon it.
It was pretty special. Like, it was ethereal, that whole moment. Like, you were there singing to him. Like, you could feel that.
I had never experienced anything like that, and it really kind of solidified, like, fuck it, dude. You have to do this. Like, you have to play music.
Somebody said you got a new friend. Does she love better than I can? There's big black skies over my town. Know where you're at, bitch, she's around. Yeah, I know it's stupid. I just gotta see it for myself. I'm in the corner, watching you kiss her. Oh, I'm not over here. Why can't you see me? Oh, I'm giving it my all. I'm not the girl you're taking home. Ooh, I keep dancing on my own. Yeah. Yes. Woo.
Which got
Next
you
day,
to Thursday.
Okay, so we're at Thursday. The show sold a decent amount of tickets, I guess, in Putney in London. Like, it's doing pretty good, 150 tickets or something. So I go to the rest stop, and we had parted ways. You had gone back to Newcastle, and I had headed towards London. And so now I'm all alone. I'm in a minivan. I have my guitar. I pulled into a motorway. I'm outside. It's like it's McDonald's. So I'm already feeling terrible because I had McDonald's for dinner, of course. And
you had McDonald's for dinner for like 15 years on tour.
I know, but I had been pretty good. We had been eating pretty good in that Airbnb. Shout out to Rudy's in Manchester too. We had some Rudy's. Yeah, I mean, I was really committing to living like a hobo, and so I remember falling asleep about maybe 10, 11 o'clock. I just started. I passed out. I had a little bottle of liquor in there, and I passed out. And 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, UK time. It was something like that, where it was like at home it was still 8 or 9 at night. Mm-hmm. And I guess maybe at midnight or at some point you had texted and you'd been like, hey, tours, those guys aren't coming over. Like, the tour's canceled.
Because Dan Reed lives in Prague, and Prague shut their borders that day. They were like, if you leave Prague on the day before the tour, then you can't get back here for a month or something, or indefinitely. So basically, Dan's hand got forced. He was like, I can't leave and then not be able to get back home. Yeah,
right. And then, so I that was all happening, and then literally within the same couple of hours, I started getting texts from back home saying, "Dude, the U.S. just put a travel ban. Anyone who's been in Sweden or the UK cannot fly in." So I pick up my phone. I'm reading these texts. One bad thing after another. I'm just like, oh, this is... And I'm like, I'm half out of it. I'm in and out of it because I'm at this rest stop. Yeah. So the first thing I do, of course on instinct, is I go to call Brian. And then that's when everything just hit me, and I started crying, and I was just like, he's the only person that would know how to get me the fuck out of this situation. Like, he knew an answer for everything. Like, any question or any predicament, he had the answer to. And on another episode in the future, I will tell the story of how my solo career really started at a Lion Eye show opening for Wolfmother. That was Brian's invention of how to make the thing happen when everything was falling apart. So I woke up, I said, all right, there's nothing I can do about this now. I woke up in the morning and I kind of posted online because people started reaching out to me and saying, yo, I know you're in the UK. Like, what's happening? Are you stuck? Like, is the tour canceled? And I was like, oh, all right, one thing at a time. Dario, I know you don't get paid a lot of money, if any at all, to do this, but I need you to basically reach out to every single venue and beg them to let me just play the show anyway. England. I'll do it for £100. I'll do it. I'll play for dinner and gas, which we ended up getting a couple of those shows.
Yeah.
I said,
then got cancelled.
I said, you convince these people to make the worst business decision of their lives, and I'll figure the rest of it out. I got London. I can take care of London. I think I can do this other one. I got some. So and we'll come back together. So I kind of put on. So at this point now, not only are we in the red big time financially, but like everything that happens from that moment on, I'm like, I really need a coffee because I'm exhausted and I got to start driving, but that's going to be $5.75, and I really need to get gas. But if I can get to this place, it all became this nightmare. So I got online and I just said, look, I don't want charity, okay? But I'm going to sell these T-shirts and CDs that I had for this tour. I'm putting them up for sale. I put them up online. Sold a bunch of them. I mean, they went very quickly. And then people just started PayPaling and Venmoing. And through the kindness of my fans and friends and family, within a matter of 2 hours, I was financially able to sustain for at least 2 weeks. All right, so we breathe a little bit.
It's amazing.
We say, okay, I'm not gonna die out here, and I'm not gonna have to, ask people. I'm fortunate enough that if I was really in a terrible situation, I'm sure between you and my parents and, people, I would not die. I'd be okay, but I don't want to have to do that. All right, so basically now we learned that there's talks of a lockdown in the UK. It's kind of starting to. They're talking about it. So the shows that we've spent 2 or 3 days organizing, right?
We
have you have gone from.
Yeah. I mean, we did pretty well.
We had a week's worth of shows lined up, basically. Five shows lined up from nothing, and then we started getting more people kind of reaching out. Like in fact, it's really funny because Paul, my manager now, reached out and said, "Hey, I got a guy in Belfast that'll book you. Like he's got you for this, so he'll take care of this." So all of a sudden it felt like we can do this. Like,
100%.
We're here to solve problems, right? Like somebody told me that once. All touring is problem solving. The show's the smallest part of the day. The rest of it's solving the problem. So a good friend of mine named Ella Stormark, she works for Orange Amplifier. She's a photographer, a music journalist. She's been putting on this monthly show in London every month and she basically either has a totally psychedelic night or she has a band, it's often popular group of musicians or a band come and cover a specific psychedelic record, like a Deep Purple night, a Thin Lizzy night, on and on and on. So I see that she's got a show in London Thursday night. And I called her up and I said, dude, this is crazy. If there's any way you can throw me on the bill, I don't need money. I don't need anything. Just if you can, whatever you can do, I'll play for beer.
Yeah.
Because the Half Moon basically said, we'll do a door deal. We don't want to do it. We do want to do it. It got so crazy.
They were really helpful, but they were really helpful. They wanted to do it, but then I think it was a case of people weren't coming. People didn't want to travel. They had to announce that Dan and Danny weren't going to be there, so then people were going to stop traveling, and it just because the government here wasn't making any decisions.
Right.
Venues were having to make decisions for themselves, for people's safety and stuff. So it got to one of those points where like people were just stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like venues just didn't know what to do. I mean, they would have all these shows lined up that they've spent money on promoting. They've obviously got staff lined up for that night. They want to do the shows, but then artists were cancelling shows because they just didn't know what to do. Nobody knew what to do, basically.
Right.
Because there was no direction.
And that was the same. Right, and that was kind of the same situation. What we were in this. So all this is happening at once. I just want people to, when they're listening to this, to realize that it's all happening at once. That was happening. The stuff with Brian passing was happening. The tour stuff was happening, and then at the same time, the U.S. government. There was no leadership direction from Trump, and the State Department was literally copying and pasting a transcript of his speech as the travel guidelines. So it literally said for 5 days, no exaggeration, 5 days, it says on the website, complete travel ban from the UK to the US. Then after 5 days, they clarified it, right? But then everyone rushed at the same time, and the airports were a madhouse for another week. Flooded.
I think the other thing with this is that nobody really knew what COVID was, apart from that it was some sort of like kind of respiratory infection. And especially for someone who is a singer like you, it's a whole other ballpark of what you've got to consider. Because like for me, if I was to get it, I'd take it and I'd be okay. But like nobody knows the long-term effects of what it's going to do to your breathing or anything. And as a singer, like you obviously have to consider that way more than any other person traveling, really, because that could be the rest of your career just done by taking a flight too early.
Right, and I was watching video footage and talking to people who are going to airports, and they were just, it was sardines of people and waiting 12, 15, 24 hours in an airport. So we said, all right, let's wait it out, because eventually the UK will make a travel ban that won't allow people to leave, but let's see if we can squeeze in, let it die, let the airports figure their shit out for a little bit. So we re-rented the flat in Manchester, and I stayed for about another week, about a week.
Yeah, I didn't go down, though. I was sorting shit out up in Newcastle that time.
Yeah, you had your whole business thing going on, so...
Family
and you were
business
moving
thing
into
going
a
on,
brand new... Yeah, you were moving into a new flat, and...
Trying to,
I just distinctly remember being like, all right, the Airbnb rate, it got like the guy couldn't book it any more days because of a restriction. The company, Airbnb, made a restriction, so I had to leave and go get a travel lodge. So I remember at one of the open mic nights, we had watched this singer, Chloe Foy from Manchester. She performed with a string section, and oh boy, did it. I mean, it blew me away, and it blew the show. Was like, she stole the show. And I remember being like, holy shit, she's great. Then I followed her on social media, and she was on a tour, and that tour ends like a week later. So lo and behold, I'm in Manchester. I'm in a travel lodge. I have nothing to do, and I see that she's playing kind of like maybe a mile away. So I go to watch her play her last show, and this is the last show in the city basically before everything. The next day is the shutdown.
Yeah. So
I go see her, and I am talking to the string player. His name is Harry Fausting Smith, and I'm watching him, and I talked to him after the show, and I said, hey, you're great, man. Next time I come over here, I would love to just get in the studio with you. And he's like, well, what are you doing this week? My buddy owns a studio. And I said, well, I'm not doing anything because I'm stuck here. He said, he said, okay, well, hit me up and maybe we'll get together and we'll do a song or something. And I said, all right. So I go, shit, I got to go back to the hotel and write a song. I mean, I just said I had some songs, but I didn't have anything. Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting in the hotel the next day. We had talked on the phone, and it was kind of this dreary day. And where my hotel was situated in the on the street, anytime a car passed, it like made a shadow on the light came in the room and then left, and it made like weird shadows. So all afternoon and night, I would just see these shadows on the wall. And I started to think to myself, all right, if there's any time to write a song, it's about sitting in a hotel room in Manchester, like you're stuck, like you're fucked. So that's where I wrote Ode to Manchester. And so I called the guy the next day. I had the whole song already written out. And I said, this is the tune. And from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m., we wrote and recorded and arranged an entire song, recorded it. And that evening, you and I were texting back and forth, hey, do I fly home today or do I wait 2 more days? Do I fly home tomorrow or wait 2 more days? And then we found out that all the flights from Aer Lingus and my airline were basically being like canceled every hour. Stuff was getting canceled. It was like I looked at a flight, I'd be like, should I book this one? And as I'm looking at the screen and talking to you, it disappeared and it goes flight canceled, flight canceled, flight canceled. And I'm like, I can't. If I'm stuck here, I'm going to end up moving in with your family, and then you're never going to talk to me again. So, so the end of the story really is that I ended up getting the next day. I got the absolute last flight out of Manchester to the USA, and flew home. And that was March 22nd, and that was
which was just before the national lockdown here. That was like 2 or 3 days before the first like national lockdown here. So it was one of those times that I think we will always look back on, like just the pure like highs and lows, ups and downs. Like it was an actual roller coaster for like 2 or 3 weeks. Like
it was heavy
because it was one of those things like, are you going to be stuck here? Can you eat? Like you've lost one of your best friends of the whole world. Like it was just, you can't write it. You can't write it at all.
Well, you can, and I did.
I think that's the point. Out of the experience, so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I look back on it now.
I mean, looking back on it now, though, yeah.
Yeah, reflecting on it now, it's just like one of the. There's a handful of times where you look back on this and you're like, I'm meant to do this. Because I'm still doing it. After all that, I still am doing it. Like, you know? I mean, I think about you often. I think about you and like your life before touring and music, right? Like you basically have all the tools if you wanted to like go work at a Fortune 500 financial company. You know, do you know what I'm saying? Like you have these skills and like had a path in life. But I'm saying in a hypothetical world, you could have been a person that just said, all right, fuck it. Like obviously pursuing a dream is a stupid idea. And I'm going to do this sensible thing because I'm smart and I'm good with numbers. And I people, you know, I think you're charming. And, so the fact that even through your worst times and your worst situations, like you continue to do this, right? And looking back on all those worst times, you're still figuring out now how you can do this more.
Yeah,
right. I mean, like,
but it's experience. Like nobody very few people will have had a week or two like we did during COVID. Everybody will have had one of the most traumatic times of their lives, but I can't imagine it would really compare to what you really went through in that week. And like even my experience of that week or two is like a tenth of what you were going through. But like you've pushed yourself further than anybody, most other people ever have or ever will. They'll never even get close, really. And is that not the whole point of everything, to find out what you can and can't do and push yourself and make the most of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think
if you can get through it.
Yeah, the takeaway to me is that you can do anything.
Anything.
It's just what do you want to do, right?
Yeah,
that's the question. It's not what can you do. You can pretty much do anything. If you see guys in wheelchairs playing basketball, and you see people who have two artificial legs racing down a track, then you can do anything. It's not like, you know what I mean? You're the limit. So it's what do you want to do? I want to play music, so I will do it.
Yep. And I
don't know.
When I think back to that
probably
week, there were
one
like
of the stupidest. I'm probably one of the stupidest people ever for it.
Yeah, but when you look back at that week, there's probably like 2 or 3 moments from that week that like will live with me forever. Like, I mean, that night, like watching you sing "Dancing on My Own" in the whiskey jar, like
the whiskey jar changed my life unequivocally, no question about it. It is a moment in my life that meeting those musicians and seeing what it's all about, right? Like, yes, I love playing big venues. I love playing to a lot of people. I love the energy from a big crowd. I love festivals. I love being on a tour bus. I love all these things. But I also do love being in a minivan and going to this curated open mic night at a venue in Manchester and being blown away by 15 of the best musicians I've ever seen sing songs and play guitar. And it humbling you and letting you know that, like, you are not shit, you know? Like, you're nothing. There's thousands of people like you out there, and it was like this wave of awesome. I don't know. It changed my life going to the Whiskey Jar, for sure.
I think we've covered the years since then quite a lot in bits and how we've dealt with everything since then. And it's weird that it is almost like a year to the day that like you flew out to Portland to come and see me and Dan, and like that much time has passed. So I know it's hard to look forward into next year because, especially right now as we're recording this, the UK has probably gone back into like a complete lockdown.
They just announced tonight. They just announced in the UK, right?
Yeah,
full lockdown.
So the speech has happened whilst we were recording this, so I think it's
full lockdown. Yeah, full lockdown.
But after all of that, so some of those moments, like in March, must have been like the lowest moments, not just in your career, but in life, possibly. 9 months down the road, you're in a position where you're generally looking forward and looking up, and it's a kind of feels like a sky's the limit kind of vibe now, which is pretty amazing considering where it was at and what you went through.
I don't know when people will hear this or when they'll see this or whatever, but I can say without going into too much detail about it that I have an incredible record label that I've just signed to. I have a team of booking agents in every territory of the world that are the two companies that represent me for both hemispheres are banana. They're the best in the game. And I have a full record under my belt that will come out this year in 2021. And I have another record that I've basically written that we're going to try to make happen, you know, either later in the year or next year. And I think the one thing that I would just say to anybody who's listening to this, if you're a musician or if you're not a musician, just whatever you do in life, just keep going. That's like the only rule to this whole thing is like, even when you think it's the worst possible, and some bad stuff's still going to happen. I'm completely aware of this.
100%. It's
no
not gonna
question.
Be easy, even if things
this is
are looking
not
good.
Right. Because imagine if things, let's say you were an artist that had stadium tours lined up. I mean, everything's went away. So the only thing I would say to people truly is like, there's good and there's bad, and try to stay in the middle of both of those things and keep pushing through it. Nothing else matters. Just push. If this is the thing you want to do, then you'll do it.
And I think you've worked hard at constantly getting better, whether it be like actually controlling your voice and learning how to get the most out of it, or whether it be developing your songwriting, like even having written an album that people really like, the next one you're trying to do it differently and better and work out different angles of how you can get more out of what you're doing. Because I think working hard is like a base requisite, like a prerequisite of what you've got to do. Like everybody should just be aiming to work hard, but if you can work smart and be the person who's working smartest at the same time as the person who's working hardest, then that eventually will kind of pay dividends. It might take 20 years, but
right. I mean, I'll be in 2021. That's this year. That's not for like professionally, but from when I really started pursuing music, it'll be 20 years this year. And I mean, this episode's way heavier and more reflective than I thought it would be, but
I'm gonna lighten it in a minute, don't worry, because I'm gonna make you miserable.
Okay. I just simply think that just the only thing aside from keep going is that I think people put these immense pressures on themselves to like that they have to change everything overnight. And I think that the thing is, and I know this sounds so stupid, but like going into the lockdown, I couldn't do like 4 or 5 push-ups like in a row. Like I literally couldn't do them, maybe 5 total. And I can do 100 now, 120. And I can keep
in a row.
No, not in a row, but so I can do 20. I do 4 sets of 25 with a 1-minute break in between, right? And that's something I couldn't do 8 months ago. And it's not some great physical feat. I just mean for me personally, I did 5. And then the next week I said, all right, you got to get 10 in this sitting. And I didn't like beat myself up over it. And I didn't kill myself over it. I simply just said each time I do it, I'm going to do a little bit more. And I think that's the secret, is that you got to just do a little bit to get better every day. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go from 0 to 100, but you can easily go from 0 to 100 over a few months.
I think, especially like when you're younger, like and especially with the music industry, you're so desperate to get ahead and make something happen. You convince yourself that you've got to do it now, and everything's got to happen now. And if you miss that chance, then you're fucked, and you're not going to make the progression you need to, and you've got to put yourself in the vision of that booking agent, or you've got to try and get on that label, or you've got to play that show. And I think probably what we've just learned as we've got a little bit older is that we've actually got... It's weird that we've discussed like that, you know, sometimes you don't have anywhere near as much time as you think you have, and, you know, life is short and it can go like that. But you have to learn that sometimes you can be patient and things take time, and if you just keep working at it and not kind of digging a hole for yourself by trying too hard, then it can all come round eventually. It's a very weird paradoxical thing we've discussed, but
it is, but it comes back. It comes back to the one thing. It's like, what do you want to do, right? What do you want to do? It's not about the specific label, and it's not about the specific tour. It's never about any of that. It's slowly getting better at all the things. If you start on a label, which everyone does, you have to start on a shit record label. That happens. Learn as much as you can about the things, and we've talked about this before. There's 2 mentalities about watching live music. If you can't just dismiss it because you don't like it. You have to learn something from it. You could say, man, I don't like this band at all.
Yep.
But this is the thing that they're doing right, and this is the thing that I don't like, that I don't want to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can continue to teach yourself from every situation. So, what a talk. What a chat today.
Congratulations on making it to the end of another episode of Tour Talk. You can keep up to date with us across the socials at Tour Talk Pod, so that's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Patreon. Please subscribe, comment, like, and share, and we will see you next week.